Thanks again for coming today. This is the first fall event in our 2023 Kenan Institute Distinguished Fellows event. We're really pleased to have Thomas Stith here. He's brought a panel along with him, which he'll introduce in a moment, that really excited to hear from. So a little bit of background first. So each calendar year, the Kenan Institute does a grand challenge, which is a deep dive on a topic that's relevant to business and policymakers. This year, it's called Workforce Disrupted, and we're looking at the many changes that have occurred for both employers and employees, especially since the pandemic. Things such as difficulties that some firms are having hiring to fill open jobs, the embrace of remote work by many workers. And upcoming in October is our Frontiers of Business Conference. That'll be at the Carolina Inn, October 12th and 13th. And so we certainly would welcome you there. There's registration information on the website, and I'll remind you at the end about that too. Want to thank for their support for the Distinguished Fellows Program, Bruce and Katie Bonson. So we're really pleased to have this panel today that is going to be moderated by Thomas Stith. So a little bit about Thomas. His career spans numerous industries, including state and local government, higher ed, technology, nonprofits, healthcare, transportation, and energy. His commitment to driving measurable organizational and community change is really at the core of his work and the common thread through that. His most recent tenure in the public sector was as president of the North Carolina Community College System, which is the nation's third largest and comprises 58 colleges across the state. And during his tenure there, he secured $1.4 billion in legislative investment, turned around the declining enrollment that the system was experiencing, and redesigned recruiting efforts that resulted in an unprecedented number of diversity hires within the senior team leadership. So today you'll moderate a panel of leaders discussing the strategies to build a sustainable workforce pipeline here in North Carolina. And we'll have some time after the panel discussion to answer some questions. So be thinking about your questions, but please hold them till the end. And with that, I'm pleased to hand things over to Thomas, who's going to introduce the panel.
Thank you so much, Greg. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for your leadership. The Kenan Institute is not only known here, of course, in North Carolina, but nationally and globally. And want to appreciate your leadership. Welcome, Paige. Looking forward to her leadership. I've had the opportunity to work with both of you over the last several months, and I will have to say it is in very good hands. I'll take a moment and introduce our very distinguished panel and run through a few slides, and then we'll get into the crux of today's session. Someone asked me earlier today, have you moderated? I said, no, I'm usually one of the panelists. So I'm going to enjoy grilling these individuals today, asking those deep and probing questions, and I'm going to count on you when we open it up for Q&A to do just the same so I can enjoy them responding to your questions. Let me introduce them first, and then just want to have a couple of slides to kind of frame today's discussion. First, we have Dr. Jeff Cox. Jeff became the 11th president of the North Carolina Community College System on June 1st, 2023. And I will say, as the individual most recently following me, I had a full afro when I started as president of the system. And Jeff and I were talking, I was rooting for him as he went through the process. I said, Jeff, you better go in and lose it now, because it's going to go after a couple of months. So he took my counsel, I see, and is avoiding that shock of losing all the hair like I had to do. Dr. Cox, on a serious note, Dr. Cox previously served as president of the Wilkes Community College from 2014 to 2023, and also served from 2022 to 23 as head of the North Carolina Community College System President Association. Native of Allegheny County, Dr. Cox is former superintendent of Allegheny County Schools from 2005 to 2014. Dr. Cox, thank you for joining us today. Senator Amy Galey. Senator Galey represents Senate District 25, covering Alamance and Randolph counties. Senator Galey serves as the chairman of Appropriations on Education and Higher Education, and also chairman of Higher Education and Education Committee. Prior to her service to the North Carolina General Assembly, Senator Galey was chairman of the Alamance County Commissioners. Senator Galey is licensed to practice law in North Carolina, South Carolina, and the District of Columbia, and is a proud double Tar Heel, receiving her undergraduate and law degree from UNC Chapel Hill. Jennifer Paylor is Vice President, Head of Global Talent Innovation and Skills Transformation for Capgemini. Capgemini is a global leader in garnering or partnering with companies to transform and manage their business by harnessing the power of technology. Capgemini is an organization of 350,000 team members in more than 50 countries across the globe. Prior to Capgemini, Jennifer spent almost 23 years, or a little over 23 years, with IBM in various executive development and acceleration HR leadership development roles. And last but certainly not least, Gary Salamido. Many of you will want to meet Gary afterwards. He is the president and CEO of the North Carolina Chamber. That's where the jobs are, okay? Well, that's where the businesses are. All right. Gary has been a leading voice in our state for decades and now leads the state's #1 voice for business. Most recently, Gary, North Carolina was named the #1 state for business in the country, and for 2 years consecutively, we've achieved that status under Gary's leadership. Gary has, prior to his service with the Chamber, Gary had 19 years with GlaxoSmithKline, where he served as Director of Government Affairs. Before we go into a few slides, I just want to provide my own personal kind of framing for today. And as we look at the workforce and we look at the need to ensure that we have a sustainable and robust workforce pipeline, while you may think I'm a little biased, I'm not. That pipeline is going to originate, and that workforce is going to originate, I believe, a good number from our North Carolina community college system and the community college systems across the country, in conjunction with our four-year institutions. We have to have a strategy to have a sustainable, educated, and committed workforce as our leaders move to ensure that not only North Carolina's economy, but our national economy is sustainable. The changing economy has created a need for greater alignment between our higher education system, specifically our community colleges, our businesses, and our state policy leaders. They are the ones that will work in a collaborative manner to ensure we have a vibrant and sustainable pipeline. I want to first provide you just with a little information that was done through Columbia University's Community College Research Center. And then we'll talk about a study that Harvard University did on a national level. But the first couple of slides just give you an idea of the environment from a national perspective that we see from the study from Columbia. And they found that 40% of undergraduate students, or approximately 40%, will begin their secondary study at a community college. Research also shows that community colleges will serve a significant role in our workforce, in particular following COVID-19, the global pandemic. Students without a bachelor's degree and associates, mind you, from a community college, are expected to have higher levels of digital literacy and comfortable working with technology and using data. So those hard skills that you've heard of, but also those, a little earlier at lunch, I call them soft skills. I'm behind in the times, they're now called power skills. Learning how to translate those hard skills and build those relationships within your work environment. And the final data point out of the Columbia study was an increased complexity in entry-level jobs that will require workers to have stronger math, writing, and English level skills. So as we move forward, as we come through the pandemic, these are some of the things that we're seeing on the national level. The panel will have some discussions on what we see here in North Carolina and some of their thoughts around these findings, and also the Harvard study. The Harvard study was conducted through their partnership, and it was called Imperative for Community Colleges, Employers, and America's Chronic Skills Gap. The first slide you see was really taken from educators across the country. They found that only 11% of community college leaders believe local employers are willing to set hiring targets of their graduates, and only 10% will offer job guarantees to students completing a program. So from a national perspective, you see there is some concern from the educators within the community college system that our private sector or our employers will actually provide targets and hiring goals for our graduates in the community college systems. 43% of all employers felt their community college lacks a mandate or culture to develop programs that align with their employers, what their employers are looking for. So I'm very interested in hearing from our panelists. In North Carolina, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, one of the things that you hear from businesses and industry is the robust nature of our workforce pipeline and the alignment of our community colleges. But it's very interesting at a national level, they're not seeing that, or at least 43% of employers didn't have that alignment. And then the final slide, 98%, when you look at the community college educators, 98% of the educators believe a partnership between the business community and the community colleges on a national level are very important into developing that workforce, developing that sustainable pipeline. But it drops to 59% when you look at employers and their opinions. So very interesting data from the national level, and we had that discussion prior to this. I firmly believe what we see here in North Carolina is not only a model for our state, but is a model nationally. That's why North Carolina is #1 in business. I submit to you, we figured it out. We figured out the collaboration between business, higher education, and our public officials. But let's see what they have to say. That's what we're here today for. And so the first question, and I'll have a seat and get comfortable and get some water and start the grilling. We'll let Dr. Cox take it, and we had the meeting before the meeting. Every panelist may not have a comment, or they may. We want this to be conversational, and I promise we'll save time in the session for your questions, so have them prepared. But we're going to try to make it conversational, and those that have input will have input. But I'll put Dr. Cox on the hot seat first, and just ask the first question, just your response to the national data. Do you think that is mirrored here in North Carolina when you look at the environment? And I'm going to come down there so you won't have to turn your neck. Do you think that mirrors what we see here in North Carolina, or are we doing it differently here in the state?
Well, Thomas, thank you first for the invitation to be here, be with you today, and all these fine folks. Having this conversation about workforce is critical to, of course, to our mission with the community colleges. I would say it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I feel like a lot of the national data is applicable to us as well. We're not totally different than the national picture, though I do think our being #1 in the country for business 2 years running is not by mistake. It's through a lot of leadership with our legislature and our governor. But also called out in that last study was the strong alignment of our workforce to business and industry, and specifically called out was our community college system. One of the real strengths of our state and our economy is having a community college within a 30-minute drive of anywhere in the state of North Carolina. So if you really want higher education embedded in communities and that close partnership with business and industry, proximity matters. And the fact that we've got a very robust community college system with 58 colleges, again, the third largest in the country, that makes a big difference. So I think we are different. We're leading the charge in many ways with what we're doing. But that statistic that you shared, where I think 98% of the educators believe that a partnership with business and industry is very important, but only 59% of employers. Again, I would argue that in North Carolina, if you did the same survey, it would be higher. But unless it's 100% of employers understanding and valuing that partnership, then we're not really fully realizing our potentials. So I want to make sure part of our mission going forward is that every single business and industry in the state of North Carolina knows that when they're thinking about their workforce talent pipeline, their local community colleges is at the very heart of that conversation. We're should be their very best friend and ally. And that's what we're going to be trying to do.
Senator Galey, for those in the audience that don't understand what it means to be chair, in particular of education appropriations. You have your hand on the pulse beat of the funding from the North Carolina General Assembly, and certainly in your dual role as chair of education and higher education. What are your thoughts as you look at our strategy for North Carolina? You've seen some of the results at the national level. How do you think North Carolina compare, well, your thoughts on the national data, and how does that apply to North Carolina?
Well, also thank you for having me here. Sure. It's a great day to be a Tar Heel. So in answering that question, I want to tell the story of a building that you will see if you travel I-85, I-40 through Alamance County at the exit that houses where Alamance Community College is nestled right next to the interstate. You will see a brand new building that's called the Biotechnology Center for Excellence. And the story of that building really, to me, encapsulates what goes right in North Carolina with workforce development and putting together the different partners. So we have a great community college president, Dr. Algie Gatewood, who has recently retired on June 30th. Dr. Gatewood had a vision to increase the access for students for biotechnology education. And he talked to his board of trustees, and they were forward-thinking people who could see the value in having an initiative. And they talked to LabCorp, is one of the major employers in Alamance County, a huge multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation that grew out of Dr. Jim Powell's work in the 1970s in Burlington. LabCorp needs biotechnicians, and LabCorp agreed to invest $1 million in the lab equipment that would be used to teach the students. So the board of trustees and the president of the community college went to the county commissioners. And because in North Carolina, the responsibility for capital for the community colleges rests with the county commissioners. A lot of people do not understand the role of the county commissioner, how important it is. But the county commissioners at that time, and I think that was 2017 when they first came to the board, I was serving then, the county commissioners said, yes, we will have a bond referendum, and we will ask the people of Alamance County if they will agree to take out a loan to pay for this and some other projects that the community college system had in mind. So there was a great effort to get out the word about the bond. The community coalesced and came together. Also, Alamance Burlington school system was included in the bond, and the bonds passed. And then the county commissioners who were serving, and I was still on the board then, had to have the political courage to raise the property taxes to cover the cost of the bonds, which we did that. So it wasn't that one person came up with the idea, and that was Dr. Gatewood. And that's why the role of the community college president is so important. Having visionary, forward-thinking, entrepreneur-minded community college presidents is absolutely vital. But then having that relationship with LabCorp and understanding what the needs of the local business was so important. And then the support and the communication, working off deep relationships that have been built over years between the county commissioners and the board of trustees and the local president and the community partners who got the bond through. All of those things, if one of those things had not been in place, then that building, when you pass by it, would not be there. And the students who come through that program would not have had that program go through. They would not be doing that job probably. And LabCorp would not have the opportunity to provide the services to the patients and the clients that it has. So to answer your question, I think that the survey results are not indicative of a lot of what goes on in North Carolina, but the success in North Carolina really depends on having those relationships and having, as they say, the right people in the right seats in the bus and getting the bus going.
Exactly. Jennifer, you have a global lens, Capgemini, 350,000 people. So that's a little bit on your plate when you talk about talent management. Your thoughts, what do you see in the labor market now? globally, obviously, and as it applies here in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think when I think about global, one of the things that is a trend, of course, is the skills shortage, just global. So it's not a North Carolina issue. It's not a um, American issue. This is a global issue. And so it's at a 16-year high for the skills shortage. I think for North Carolina, where I'm from, and I attended NC State, but I've also been an executive coach here at the Kenan Center for the MBA students. Because in my role at IBM, one of the things that companies like IBM and companies all around North Carolina want to do is really bring the skills from North Carolina and help in the community. So one of the things that I see, just from a skills perspective, is in North Carolina, we have so many industries. You know, we talked about healthcare, pharma, biotech, we have banking, we have so many industries that we are going to actually contribute our value to. I was very fortunate at 19 in the tech, in engineering, to be able to learn while I was going to school. And that was it's popular now for companies to create these early entry programs and have people come in and do the apprenticeships and the internships. But IBM was really good at bringing people in early in their college years. And by the time I became a talent leader at IBM, I started reaching down to the high school level. So we have skills, we have people with different skills at different levels, really good school systems, the community colleges, the high schools, universities, where people have skills. And if we can really get those skills early and also get the people in the community, acclimated to the companies, understanding, who is this company? What is this brand? I think that's important for people to start understanding what their purpose is. And that's something that companies need to do globally. Globally, companies are trying to help people figure out, and it sounds like a soft thing, but people right now after the pandemic really want to do meaningful work, and they want to figure out, what can I do with my life? And this question is getting asked to early. It's not like when you get 30 years old, people are doing that at 15. And so I think companies in North Carolina really have a good understanding of how we work in the community, the schools, and right here together, community college, working with universities and the high school. I just think we have the best of both worlds. So when I've been offered jobs to relocate, I say we have to compete against North Carolina.
Right, sure. Well, that's good. Gary, your thoughts, what do you see? And I know that the NC Chamber, along with the National Chamber of Commerce, has a very strong laser focus on workforce. And certainly your leadership has been exemplary. You see the results in the rankings. What are some of your thoughts on what the national data is showing and what you see here in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, thank you, Thomas, and thank you all today for this discussion. First of all, we're going for a three-peat. That's never been done before. And so with the talent here, and with the talent around this state, and the talent in our classrooms everywhere, we got a good chance of doing it again, because we can get everything else right, but if we don't get the talent, cultivation, the talent, the education, the training, the adult learners, all that stuff, if we don't lead there, then we're not going to stay on top, and we're not going to be the best place for our grandkids to grow up. At my age, I'm one close by. And so I think the national data, yeah, well, that's indicative, but I think a national survey says we don't have confidence in our community college system. It's the rest of the country trying to get us to look the other way. We do have confidence in our community college system. And we have great working relationships. We have an alignment in North Carolina now with our leadership between K-12, community college system, university system, of a generation of people that see it the same way, that see collaboration as the X factor, that see not competition with each other, but how do we make ourselves even better? How do we meet people where they are, whether they're in 6th to 8th grade and we're doing career learning, whether we're creating a good portrait of a graduate so they have those durable skills at the end of 12th grade for a post-secondary career of their choice, wherever that may be, community college, skills, going to university. And so we have this great combination right now. And so I think the national data is indicative, because hold up the mirror, we should always be, but everybody's watching right now. North Carolina's secret sauce is out in the open. So for us, And for our members, it's about, do we have the courage now together, because we have the alignment of leadership and this moment in time that doesn't exist very often, right? So you've got aligned leadership across a number of different dimensions. And we have a top economy, a diverse economy. We have a net in migration of talent because of all of that. We have good aligned systems. Now, how do we have the courage to make the structural changes that set a statewide framework but delivers it locally, where data and demand-driven collaborations between the businesses and the educational institutions are executing on a broader strategy. And, you know, not one size every fits all, right? I'm a pharmacist, so originally it's about the community. All healthcare is delivered local, right? And with the person, all lobbying, while I lobbied a long time in many state capitals, at the end of the day, the best lobbyist is the constituent that you see when you come home. That's all local. And education takes places in schoolrooms and libraries and places with good internet that will get better at all over the state, every moment in time. So I'm excited about North Carolina. I think we're well positioned to lead for really long.
Sure. A couple of things I want to drill down on, this issue of skills gap, and I think that's even more accelerated now with the impact of AI. You speak about the collaboration, Gary, and if we have the will to get the model right. But let's start first with this quote skills gap, because we saw that pre-pandemic. You know, just the need for filling up that workforce pipeline now with the advent of AI and the impact that's having in the labor market. Give some thought, or let's have some discussion on your particular role in your roles. What do you see around the skills gap? What's your definition? Everyone looks at it a little differently, and how can we address it effectively from a policy perspective? You want to go first? You put it out there first, Jennifer. Why don't you start, and then everyone else can chime.
Dream skills. I have a very interesting perspective coming from inside a corporation in the last 20 years. One of the things I do believe is that sometimes the skills gap is real. I do think sometimes that when I say we, institutions or organizations, we create these skills gaps. And in my role, the way I like to think about it, take a recruiting, for example. Many of you in here will be applying for jobs, whether you are new to the workforce or you are very experienced in the workforce. The recruiting process that was established when we created divisions of labor. Labor meaning human beings doing tasks and work. Recruiters would basically put up a job description, and you will read the job description, and this is the job, and it's not really the job that you do when you get in there. So what needs to happen now with the skills gap? Skills are evolving and changing at lightning speed. So the skills that there are some skills that just resurface too. So there are skills that will never go away. You talk about durable skills and durable trades, but there are skills that are evolving or they're being used in different ways. So people talk about ChatGPT a lot. And there are jobs out there now called prompt engineering that people are making $250,000. These skills are, they were not skills before. There are skills when the pandemic hit, how do you virtually connect? The power skills, these connection skills. It's a little bit, it's natural to connect in person, but sometimes it's difficult to connect virtually in a hybrid workplace. So the skills shortage sometimes requires a mindset shift in all of our processes, our infrastructure, the way we recruit talent, the way we attract, retain talent, and more importantly, how do you continue to upskill talent every day? Because whatever job or whatever skill you have today is going to change in a year, and in 3 years, it's going to look completely different. So we all, in every industry, every organization, has to keep this mechanism of how to skill. So really looking for people and setting yourself up with the growth mindset of how do I continue to learn? So I think that skills shortage is going to require a lot of different collaboration and AI. the way I think about AI is, sometimes you'll see the robot, you'll hear people that ask me this question, are you afraid the robots are coming? I'm an engineer, by trade.
You made them.
Yeah. I actually have with AI in there, but I believe that AI has the opportunity to make us more human. That's my view. And I think that we can leverage AI to augment us, extend our humanity. So example, I don't have one, but I want one day, automatic lawnmower that will, kind of cut the grass and everything, and I can spend more time, doing other things. But there are some good things about AI, really good things. And then there are some things that we together as humanity need to make sure ethically that things don't happen. So I think this is the age where the division of labor is not just human beings doing tasks, it's humans with AI and machines working together. And I think if we right now start to learn those digital skills when it comes to AI, blockchain, Meta, all these digital technologies in this 4.0 industrial era, these are some of the skills along with those soft skills, creative thinking, pure thinking, connection skills, trust building. These are things that these computers are not going to do. They're not going to be able to say, hello, Amy, like they really mean it. That's something that only humans can do.
Yeah. Who would like to go next? President Cox?
Yeah, so I think that certainly there is a skills gap. I think you touch on something important that sometimes I think we manufacture a little bit of the gap ourselves. So one thing that I'm seeing that's beginning to change is what we call the paper ceiling. With a lot of business and industry have a bachelor's degree as a requirement for entry. When really the actual skill set may be achieved by someone with an associate degree or even a short-term credential as far as some entry-level jobs. So that's beginning to crack open that paper ceiling that a lot of companies are getting away from having specific bachelor or master's degree requirements, and they're looking more at skills. I think the more we can dig into what is the actual skill that a company needs, we can create short-term workforce credentials that match up very nicely with the specific skills that a company needs. I'll give you one quick example of that. During my time at Wilkes Community College, we were having a conversation with companies about the tremendous need for technology talent. Lowe's Companies was born in Wilkes County and used to be headquartered there. So we had some relationships with that company, but they were saying they couldn't find the IT talent. So we started digging in with them to say, look, be specific. Is it cybersecurity? Is it software engineering? Is it IT support? If you can tell us what is your biggest pain point, we can partner with you to create a pipeline and get you the employees you need. So when we boiled it down, their biggest need was really for just entry-level IT support. We figured out what's the industry credential you need for that job. Really specifically what is it? So, well, it's a CompTIA certification is really kind of the industry standard there. We said we can create that program. We can put students through it in 15 weeks, get them this CompTIA certification. And if you say, well, we need 10 of them right now. So, well, if you'll commit to hiring all 10 students, we'll develop a cohort. We'll go recruit 10 students. We'll put them through the program in 15 weeks. You commit to hiring them. And by the way, this work can be done remotely, so we want you to let the students stay in Wilkes, Asher, Allegheny County. We don't want them to have to move to Charlotte. They can if they want to, but it's remote tech talent. We want to become your rural tech talent pipeline. Mm-hmm. We created that partnership. They agreed to it. They agreed to hire all of the graduates. If they graduated, got the certification, they agreed to hire them, and they did. All those students took the program. The ones who got through, completed, were hired by Lowe's company, and Inmar Technology was another company that partnered with us. They hired all those graduates. All those graduates got out making $40,000 a year. in a full-time job with benefits, I think the average increase in wages was 73% for those students. So I use that point to illustrate the idea that the closer we can come to a one-on-one relationship between a company that has these specific jobs they're trying to fill and a local community college that can stand up a program or recruit and market a particular program to a group of students, the closer that's a one-to-one relationship between here's a job, here's a student, here's a community college, it's the bridge between that student and that job. That makes the operations seamless, because what we were struggling with at the college is we had an IT program, but we couldn't recruit students into it because they didn't see IT jobs in our rural part of the world. So rather than just, sit back and bemoan the fact that we didn't have IT jobs, we created a different model and said IT jobs can be done from anywhere.
Sure.
We launched that program in February of 2020 at the Institute for Emerging Issues, and we thought the biggest problem is going to be convincing companies to let their employees work remotely.
You were visionary.
I was
You were visionary.
I saw
You were visionary. Yeah.
I mean, we had no idea, but that, of course, totally changed the dynamic, and now everybody's working. So the concept of that, though, is applicable across the state now, and we know not just IT jobs, but how many other jobs are being done remotely. And so, thinking about that broadly, I would encourage everybody in the room just to be thinking about what does that do for our overall state and the rural-urban divide. And we got a bunch of folks in rural North Carolina who are super smart and want really great jobs that don't always exist in those rural parts of our state, that real living wage jobs. So we're going to look for opportunities like that to expand
Sure.
those kinds of partnerships with businesses. If you will tell us specifically what your need is, we can create a talent pipeline to solve those problems.
Not to put you on the spot, Gary, he's talking to your membership. What do you hear from the businesses across the state? Are they able to identify those that workforce that has the skills that they need now, and as importantly, as they look into the future? Do you get that from your membership?
Yeah, and I think for a long time, folks were kind of talking past each other. But I've seen over the last 3 years, even less than that, particularly over the pandemic, which has been really a fascinating lens, because people, they say people left the workforce, or it was the great resignation. I disagree with that. It was the great reassessment from wherever you were in your life, whether you're in healthcare, no matter where you were. None of us can remember ever being told we couldn't go anywhere. And so that mindset and how hard I was working and what I was working for and what was the mission, we had 2.5 years of people reassessing what their next phase of their lives going to be. So I think companies learned a lot, and we became better communicators. And I think our education community learned a lot and became better communicators, and we both became better listeners. Right. So I'm optimistic as to how the communication is going right now. And I think as we get better on the immediate skills, the ability to be a lifelong learner is where the business community is looking for and identifying its talent. Now, we have to meet near-term needs, but from the youngest point when our children start reading all the way through their lives, being an adult learner, being curious all the time, having access to local, state, national, international sources of education, so you can get the best educator and whatever you want, no matter where you are. Folks that are very curious and just want to learn all the time, I think are going to be where we go in the future, and it's going to look and feel a lot different. And so the companies are getting better at communicating. We're getting better at listening, and I think our education counterparts are too. But that adult learner piece and meeting people where they are, wherever they are in their lives, is going to be critically important.
Sure. Senator, as I mentioned earlier, you are literally leading our state policy when it comes to higher education. not only from a policy point of view, but your other role from a funding point of view, more importantly, as importantly as well. I'll let you start off, but want to engage all the panelists from a strategic perspective. As you hear about, the skills gap, and you hear about the challenges that business and also our education community is facing, what are some of the state policies that you think could be either changed or developed that would enhance our workforce here? And again, while we talk about here in North Carolina, I contend we're a national model. So any thoughts around that to start that part of the discussion?
Thank you. And when I think about the skills gap, you think where in a worker's life could you first mark, okay, this is a place where a skills gap has arisen, where we can maybe even measure it. And that's kindergarten readiness. We don't think of early childhood education as being workforce development, but it is. If a child is not ready for kindergarten, statistics show that they are much, much less likely to graduate from high school and to have a thriving economic place in society. Another place where we can measure that skills gap is in 3rd grade in writing or reading and math scores. Again, in the 8th grade, reading and math scores. Y'all are, I guess, young enough that you remember going through those tests as you came. If you went to public education, remember going through all of that. In North Carolina, we see that our 8th graders are not proficient in math or reading. And we have invested a lot in the last 3 to 5 years in implementing the science of reading. There's a program, Read to Achieve. That is an initiative of Senator Berger's. And it has been adopting the science of reading, which is teaching children to read more through to digest it down to really probably oversimplification, teaching children to read by phonics instead of old language and using the 3 cueing system. So we've seen already since we've started to roll out the science of reading and reading instruction, we already have started to see improvements in the test scores for the children who have had access to that. 2 things. One, I think a lot about the students over the last 20 years who have gone through North Carolina public schools who honestly received failed reading instruction and essentially were made to feel like it's their fault. And they could be 25, 35 years old now and still have residual struggles from a lack of appropriate reading education because the curriculum was not grounded in science. And that troubles me deeply and burdens me for those people. Number 2 that I think about is, what about the science of math? Okay, if we've figured out, okay, the science of reading, using the phonics, maybe sprinkling some sight words and understanding it's through if you spell it this way or through if you spell it that way, teaching children that. But what about the science of math? And how come they got it locked down in Singapore and China and we can't figure it out after 35, 40 years of struggling math education in the United States? It can't be such a big mystery. We've got to be able to figure that out because, as you know, all the STEM, the science, technology, and engineering, mathematics, it all revolves around or starts with multiplication tables and learning how to multiply and divide and learning fractions and learning basic algebra. X equals 1. X minus 1 equals Y. Helping children to understand those things and to be grounded in a basic foundation in math. That is one of the things that concerns me more than anything else. Sure. And working together with the Department of Public Instruction, local school boards, and others to try to figure that, and departments of education,
sure.
To try to figure that out.
What about policy changes or enhancement? Other thoughts? Anyone else on the panel? Get Gary.
I think a couple of things. We can do a lot better in North Carolina with our veterans, our military, and their spouses, in how we're making it easier for them to integrate into the jobs that are available all over the state of North Carolina. We have, 80, the military presence in North Carolina, the people that are here, is an incredible number of really, special folks that are coming here to serve their country but we get over 1,000 of them are being discharged a month. More than that. And, but they're not staying here. Now, some people, people want to go home and everything, but it should be easier to say, were you aware that these opportunities, and by the way, here's the pathway through whatever community you want to live in to get the skills and the training and, skilling that you need. And to begin looking at our military and our military spouses and those veterans more in kind of a flywheel concept instead of an on-ramp and off-ramp concept. So what policies can we do there? And the other piece, and there's some great work being done here right now at the School of Government on the justice involved in that second chance hiring. As we look at our criminal codes and not talking about violent offenders, not talking about that, talking about the folks that maybe got involved once, didn't have the resources to get out and got caught in the system. Can we look at the justice involved or second chance hires and be able to, put good policies in place that protect our public, but at the same time give people an opportunity that made a mistake to re-enter the workforce again with pretty transparent and easy ways to get the skills that they need. Those are two that come to mind right away that we can do a lot better.
Sure.
I'll just add, Thomas, apprenticeships are something we think we've got a lot of potential to grow. It does what I was referring to create that one-to-one relationship between the student and the company and filling a position that's in high demand. The statistics are clear. When companies invest, and it is an investment of time and energy and resources to have apprentices, the vast majority of the time those apprentices end up coming on and working for the companies, and they end up staying for a long time. So I think currently we're 18th in the country for apprenticeships. So we're wanting to think toward being number 10 in 2 years and maybe 5 in 5 years.
Sure.
And see, what would that look like if we could really grow and expand our apprenticeship programs and get more of our students engaged with business and industry directly.
All right.
And I just want to share, Singapore and China. I spent like the first part of my career in Asia, I think the first probably 10, 12 years, and, really seeing how things were outsourced. So part of my role was, really helping to understand how we in the US, we moved from, we used to make things. And so over this last era, we started managing, organizing, and moving things. Some of these other countries, have really mastered how to make things and provide services. And so what happens, even me, like a person who loves math and science, I love all, studies, arts as well. But when I went to NC State and went to IBM and even deployed to Asia, I could take what I learned, like the math and science, and I could actually see it, see my hands doing it. I can actually correct things and engineer things with math and science. So I think that was when I started in 97. So when you think about skills are changing so fast, remember I said that? So in 20 years, if those skills get outsourced, those skills that require that math and science in Singapore, it is a culture of learning, and I do agree with you about the apprenticeship. I think that I would take it even further. I think early on, there needs to be what I call peer-to-peer social learning. And sometimes at the younger age, we do it with things like dancing. You don't pick up a book and say, let me see how to do this dance, at 5 years old or 10 years old. You might look at TikTok or YouTube, but the same thing happens with these hard, high-level skills, social learning, peer-to-peer. How do we democratize that learning at an earlier age? Because people learn from each other, and we're doing a lot of that in corporations. That's one of the things that I started at IBM. When the economy got bad, and they said, well, most of the trainers, have to do something different. We have to cut in certain areas. I said, but we still need to learn because other countries are learning. So created a social learning model where people work with each other and teach each other and get opportunities to take that learning and work on projects. So I think the more, I don't know policy, but the more we do gig economy, I think Singapore has one of the highest gig economy workforce than any other country. And that's really good because you don't have to commit to a full-time role, but you can work on a project. So the more we get gigs in North Carolina, the more we get social learning and peer-to-peer, I think we can continue to create that learning culture at an early age. So when someone gets to, a place where they decide they want to be an entrepreneur or work in an organization, they're always learning. I think that's what China and Singapore, what I've seen them really do over the last 20 years.
The idea of lifelong learning, I think you're all dead on with that. The model where you go to, K-12 school and then go to college, then go to work, that's over. It's not, you don't just finish college and then you're finished learning. We're with AI and virtual reality, all the shift is coming so fast now. We're going to all have to continue to learn and be obsolete of what our skill set is. Not in 10 years, but in a year.
Yes.
In 2 years. Whatever you learned is ancient history. So us being able to continually reinvent ourselves and be a resource for people, adult learners, all learners, to come back and get that next level of skill to layer on top of whatever they entered into a profession with is critical. And I think business and the industry recognizing that reskilling through their hiring policies and their promotion policies and their compensation policies are going to be important. If you want that skilled workforce, how do you structure your hiring policies and compensation policies to reflect that?
Yeah. I have one more burning question, but I'm going to keep my word and leave time for your questions. It's on so if we have opportunity, it's going to be on regional collaboration, the good C word. We're always worried about consolidation, but that's an inside joke in the system. But it's the good C word, collaboration, regional collaboration, and the importance as we engage with business and industry. But I'm going to hold that and open it up because I know we're getting close on time to any questions from our audience. Yes.
My question has to do with emerging technologies. And what you've discussed so far really doesn't address that, because emerging technologies take at least 10 to 15 years before you actually see it. It has an on period. If you look at main technology, I'm just going back to the piece of this. If you look at the technologies in general, it takes anywhere from 50 to 150 years before they hit it. If you look at Piper, they hit the steady state and it's absorbed. How are you addressing the lower school? Because you really have to hit it in 4th grade, 5th grade, up through, so you get the skills that you have. They see what's possible. They don't get lost in the chaos of trying to make instantaneously do something, but there's a long-term effect. And community college does a great job of that.
Yeah. You're exactly right. It's one of the real challenges that we face is having to simultaneously prepare a workforce for the jobs that exist right now, and thinking around the curve to what's coming next year, in 10 years, in 20 years. So we've developed a curriculum and the, train folks for jobs that don't even exist yet. And the pace of that change, again, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, it took decades for that to kind of fully unfold. Automation and globalization was a little bit quicker. I would posit that AI is gonna bend that curve just totally out of whack. You think 10 months ago, how many of us were even talking about AI? Where are we gonna be 10 months from now? I mean, the rapidity of the change and the necessity of us being flexible and being able to not just respond to, but be proactively thinking about what is next and how do we prepare students for those jobs that don't even exist. That's the core of one of our real challenges.
Yeah, if I could touch on that. So you hit on one of the problems with relying on government to do things. Government is very slow and very risk adverse because you're using other people's money. The taxpayers' money, investing that, you want to go where you have a high degree of certainty that you're going to get the result that you anticipate, and that can be really hard. And also, the number of demands on the taxpayers' money are enormous. You have so many competing requests. some, like water and sewer. You have a town that their water sewer lines are 100 years old. They need to improve those to deliver clean water to their people. Resources are finite. The government is going to fund things to get those resources to people. So I think maybe the answer to your question is that's really an area for private investment to the highest degree, because private investment can be much more nimble, much quicker than waiting for the government.
And I'll just share to that point, when I used to do product lifecycle development, it was long, you know. Now with the emerging technologies, it has shortened a lot because of the connections, the communications. Also, when you think about like think about SpaceX, you know, with Tesla. There are commercial, you know, air carriers going to space and things of that nature. That's all happening in lightning speed. There was I think World Economic Forum, they did a big announcement, I think it was like 8 years ago, and they said by 2030, we want to have these 24 emerging technologies, you know, up and running. Well, to their surprise, it didn't take that long. Right now, they're like almost done with some of the emerging technologies. So the product life cycle with product innovation, process innovation, and business model innovation, the private organizations are partnering with the government, partnering with doing more collaboration, which is actually decreasing that product life cycle. So that's one of the reasons why we need people to keep up, you know, keep up with these skills, because what you learn today, you can apply it in another area. So if you learn blockchain, you know, in finance, that blockchain can be applied in farming, you know, or things of that nature. Quantum right now, you know, people say quantum is so far away, you know, and there are a lot of advances. You look like the last couple of weeks, they had an announcement about the LK99, a steady state of people shaking their heads. No one thought they would actually get that steady state solution because it has to cool, you know, quantum. So things are happening really fast, and I think it's because people are more connected. The internet has moved from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So now with the Web 3.0, you're going to see technology, emerging technologies happen almost overnight.
Mm-hmm. Other question, you're right.
Any question?
I want to start by saying that I am a very proud 2023 graduate of Precise. I learned in 3 years at community college, I don't even know why I'm here. So you guys do an amazing job. But my question is, talking a little bit more about staff faculty retention, because at this point I know it's not just community colleges in North Carolina, but across the US are facing the trouble of keeping this highly specialized staff and faculty that will be training community college students, and they're competing against the industry that they train for, as well as other like institutions. I want to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on how we can keep those highly specialized professionals in community colleges and keep them trained.
I want to hear a little bit more from you, making the case for us. No, you're exactly right. The senator and I were talking about this very week about this issue. We can't put out the workforce that we need to put out if we don't have the instructors to lead the instruction. So you can pick an area. Nursing is one that comes up frequently. You know, everybody knows how high the demand is for nurses out in the private sector with all of our healthcare organizations today. So if we're going to have nursing programs in our community colleges, we have to have nursing instructors. They have to have master's degrees, so that already puts them at a kind of an elevated position in the healthcare industry. Compared to a lot of nurses who have, you know, associate degrees or bachelor degrees. So you think about their level of compensation, they're making six figures in the private sector, and then so we have to attract them in. And I use that example with nursing to say, you know, if you're having a critical health crisis and you're in there on the emergency room table, who do you want to have trained the nurse that's pushing the medicine into the veins in your arm? You know, it's an easy answer. You want the very best nurse to have done that training. So if we want to have that kind of talent, we've really got to be serious about the compensation for our community college instructors. I'm an old K-12 guy. I'd never say anything to say we should be taking money from K-12 or our wonderful university partners. But but in all sincerity, when it comes down to workforce, if we're the heart of the workforce, our instructors are at the heart of training that workforce. And if we can't compete and hire those instructors, we can't prepare the next generation of the workforce. So thank you for raising that up. It's number one on our priority list with our budget going forward. It has to be.
Far right. I've been giving them the benefit, so I'll go far right.
Salamido struck a chord with me because I'm currently in IT with an English. And I actually changed career. I was lost for years, but then I decided I wanted to get the skill set by just enlisting into the military. So when you mentioned that trying to keep veterans more, getting them more involved in the workplace, that really meant something to me. I'm curious as to what are you looking at to kind of help them, because as Dr. Cox mentioned, with their apprentice and pipeline programs, there are several different roles and abilities within the military where they receive that apprentice training as soon as they come out of boot camp. You mentioned a 15-week program where these, people get placed. Like my apprentice program for IT was 6 months, and then on top of that, you have these people have skills, not only just the education portion, but actual experience. I think people get the misconception that within the military, it's war. No, there's HR people in the military, there's IT people, there's all sorts of fields that are already covered. Where you have someone that's like 20, 21 years old, they already have life experience within those roles. So that's something definitely keep in mind where, hey, they may not have the bachelor's or the master's because they were busy kind of doing their job and gaining those skills. And I don't know if it's just more so just something that I think that it should be definitely looked at within the workforce. But it should be mentioned, but also how are you all planning on realizing that you already have a pipeline?
Yeah. Well, first, we appreciate your service. So we spent a day at Fort Bragg. We took our entire leadership team down to Fort Bragg and spent the day and learning so that we can translate with our members more of what's happening there. We're gonna try to bring people together there's good pockets, and I know Dr. Cox or Galey can talk about them too, as well, Jennifer, of things that are happening, but no one's talking to each other. So I think step one will be, okay, what are the things that are going on for our veterans and the veteran spouses and active military discharging? And how do we start connecting them and make it easier for veterans to find out where they are and access them? Right. So, and as you know, we're really preparing these young men and women when they get discharged. They're ready. 6 months before they're discharged, they're working towards whatever certificate or degree and it's happening. People are getting degrees while they're deployed in other places around the world. Colleges and universities that are going over the internet while they're in combat zone and they're getting their degrees and they're getting other skills. We're just not good at connecting them at that point of discharge with it. And so we're going to set up a group of folks, an advisory group of our member companies, folks who are veterans, and then we're going to bring in some of the veterans organizations, just kind of like call a timeout and say, okay, people all agree, we're all doing good stuff. Okay, how do we connect that? Because it's critically important, not only to our workforce, but we owe it to the folks who have served our country to make sure that they can come back and find good, meaningful jobs, take care of families.
I'll have to ask, Greg, we are 4 minutes over time. Speaking of reskill, I don't want to lose my moderator job on the first day and I have to go get reskilled. I just got this gig.